Yo, there was a time when it felt like Drake was universally loved, like he could do no wrong. Every summer, every club, every heartbreak, every Instagram caption, every late night drive, Drake was there. Yo, from a wheelchair-bound teenager on Degrassi to becoming one of the biggest rappers on the planet, he became the soundtrack to an entire generation. And that's what made this journey feel so weird, because somewhere along the way, the internet's favorite hitmaker became one of hip-hop's favorite punching bags. Yo, the memes got louder, the criticism got harsher, the beefs got uglier, and for the first time in a long time, Drake looked vulnerable. But how did we get here? How did the culture seemingly turn on him? And after everything, the record breaking, the scandals, the ghostwriting accusations, the Kendrick Lamar beef, the comeback, does Drake still deserve his flowers? Hey, what's good? My name is Maya, and in today's joint, we're doing up a deep dive on the rise, the fall, and the evolution of Drake. Now, before the platinum records, before the sold out arenas, before the memes, before the beefs, before the world knew him as the sixth god, we gotta take it back. Drake's dad, Dennis Graham, was a traveling musician, a drummer. Apparently, he'd played with Jerry Lee Lewis and them back in the day. He made a living performing in various clubs and joints across the United States and Canada. It was during one of these performances at a club in Toronto where he met Sandra. And yo, even though they were from two different worlds, Sandra was this Jewish Canadian chick who worked as a teacher and florist, and Dennis was this old school musician from the South. Somehow they hit it off. They got hitched, they had Drake. So, Drake as a kid is growing up immersed in these two different worlds. Like he's going to Jewish day school, he got bar mitzvahed and whatnot. But after his parents got divorced, he's now spending summers in Memphis with his dad. So yo, young Drake is taking in the sights and sounds, doing that homegrown Southern food dirty, hanging out with his dad and these experienced soulful Southern musicians in studio sessions. Back in Toronto, the vibes were very working class. Right up until grade 6, Drake and his mom rented the first floor and basement of a crib in a tough, lower income neighborhood. In 2000, they leveled up. They did up at Jefferson's and moved on up. They moved to Forest Hill, a more affluent neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? A little bit more posh than that. Of course, they couldn't afford the entire crib, so Sandra had the first floor, Drake had the basement, and another family lived up top. Young Drake was a natural performer. He was interested in being an actor, so he was doing up like auditions and whatnot. It got to the point where it was like he knew what he wanted to do with his life, and high school was just slowing him down. It didn't help that he was getting bullied mercilessly for his race and religious background and demeanor. The one good thing that did come out of high school, though, was, one of Drake's homies was like, yo, my dad's an acting agent. He hooked Drake up with an audition for the Canadian teen drama Degrassi The Next Generation. He got the joint playing Jimmy Brooks. The acting gig was a lifesaver. It was a lifesaver, I'm not gonna hold you. Because at this point, Drake's mom was sick. She wasn't working like that. So Drake's paycheck was helping out with bills, living expenses, all that. Whilst working on the show, Drake was also doing up music. He'd record during the night, and then the guards would let him in. He'd sleep in the dressing room and film during the day. He linked up with Melanie Fiona, who was an up-and-coming R&B singer at the time. She was performing in nightclubs around the city, and her and Drake formed an R&B group. They were bouncing ideas off each other, growing as artists. They, of course, both went on to have successful solo careers, and they're still homies. They still have nothing but nice things to say about that time in their lives.
There was just something about him right then and there, and I can honestly say in that time, he hadn't stepped into that greatness yet because television was paying the bills and but it was...
Drake even helped write a song on Melanie's album. So, Drake's figuring out his sound, finding his voice. At this point, he's heavily inspired by Jay-Z and the Clips. He drops his first mixtape, Room for Improvement, in 2006. What's great about this mixtape was how Drake was already thinking about being bigger than an artist. So even though OVO wasn't, officially established as a label yet, the mixtape was independently released through OVO. Now, Room for Improvement. This is Drake giving us glimpses of what's to come. The mixtape is hosted by DJ Smiles, showing that love and appreciation of the South, which makes sense, because of his dad and those summers spent in Memphis. He hasn't quite mastered it yet, but we're getting that blend of hip-hop and R&B with melodic flows. He had Trey Songz on one of the joints, which was an inspired choice, because Trey Songz was in that Tyrese, R. Kelly, Usher kind of umbrella, where it's like soulful R&B vocals, but the imagery and lyrical content was hip-hop. The mixtape, it wasn't necessarily groundbreaking. Drake himself went on to describe it as radio-friendly, pretty straightforward, but it definitely had people interested in seeing how Drake would evolve as an artist. The mixtape was independently released, no streams, just straight up sales, old school with it. And by the end of 2006, it had sold 6,000 copies. 2006 was also the year Drake had his first live performance. It was at a nightclub in Toronto, and he was opening up for Ice Cube. He performed for like half an hour and apparently made about $100, which is crazy when you think about how a Drake feature now can cost like 1.5 million. You know what I'm saying? So, 2007, the second mixtape drops, the comeback season. And in this joint, everything that was good about the first one is cranked up to 100. The lyrics are a lot more introspective, vulnerable. The blend of R&B and hip-hop is a lot more seamless. The standout track on this joint was the single Replacement Girl featuring Trey Songz. They dropped a music video to it. It was super popular. Drake became the first unsigned Canadian rapper to have his music featured on BET. Now, this mixtape dropped in an era where mixtapes were essentially rappers rapping over popular beats, putting their own spin on successful songs. It was the jacking for beats era, okay? So Drake was able to showcase his skills over beats by Kanye West, Ninth Wonder, Jay Dilla. And the king of this mixtape era was undeniably Lil Wayne. So it was a really smart move on Drake's part to sample a Lil Wayne joint on the album and, keep Wayne's verse so listeners could hear what Drake sounded like on a track with someone as highly rated as Wayne. It was also a smart move for another reason. See, Jazz Prince, the son of Rap-A-Lot Records founder James Prince, he discovered Drake's music on MySpace. He saw the potential, he saw the vision, and he played the songs to Lil Wayne like, hey, this Canadian dude could be up next. Now, depending on who tells the story, Lil Wayne wasn't immediately like, yes, this is the new hip-hop savior. Nah, he needed a little more convincing. Regardless, a meeting was set up in Houston. They kicked it, Lil Wayne listened to Replacement Girl, and he was impressed by Drake's melodic flow and ability to blend hip-hop and R&B like that. Lil Wayne invited Drake onto the Carter 3 tour. And as you can imagine, this was huge for Drake. The Carter 3 was one of those albums that shifted the landscape of hip-hop. This was Lil Wayne at the top of his game. Back-to-back chart-topping singles like Lollipop, A Milli, Mrs. Officer. 1 million copies sold in the first week, and Drake was there. He wasn't in the inner circle yet, but he was there soaking it all in, seeing Wayne perform on stage, seeing him interact with the audience, seeing how the crowd reacted, getting a real feel of the kind of impact he wanted to have. On that tour, Drake and Lil Wayne recorded a bunch of tracks together, laying down the groundwork for what was to come. Now, in 2009, that's when Drake really stepped onto the world stage in a major way. He dropped his third mixtape, So Far Gone. And this was Drake perfectly blurring the line between hip-hop and R&B. Drake and his producer 40 had essentially created a new sound and aesthetic. It was moody, it was full of melancholy and introspection, relying not just on the lyrics, but the melodies and production. The features on this thing were stacked. Bun B, Trey Songz, Omarion, Lloyd, and of course, Lil Wayne. The mixtape was a free download on the OVO blog website. Within the first couple of hours, man, it was like 2,000 downloads, okay? Songs like Successful and Best I Ever Had blew up, going platinum, which was almost unheard of for mixtape joints. Yo, Best I Ever Had hit number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Here was this unsigned Canadian rapper right there on the charts with the Black Eyed Peas, Beyonce, Kanye West, Taylor Swift. It was crazy. And it led to one of the biggest bidding wars ever. All these major labels fighting for a piece of Drake. He bagged a recording contract with Lil Wayne's Young Money under Cash Money Records, and he immediately joined the label's roster on the America's Most Wanted tour in 2009. Now, in 2009, Drake dropped a song called Forever, okay, for a LeBron James documentary. And this thing was crazy. It was one of the last songs to have like back-to-back features from rappers on top of their game. This was a huge moment for Drake because he was on the same record with 3 of the biggest rappers to ever do it. This was his moment to show that he could hold his own. And yo, he opens up the song with what is widely considered one of the greatest first lines on a rap joint. This man goes, last name ever, first name greatest, like a sprained ankle, boy, I ain't nothing to play with. He goes on to say, started off local, but thanks to all the haters, I know G4 pilots on a first name basis. In your city, faded off the brown, Nino, she insists she got more class, we know, swimming in the money, come on 5e, Nemo, info's at the club, you know about, Chemo, dropped the mixtape, it sounded like an album. Who'd have thought the countrywide tour would be the outcome? Labels want my name beside an X like Malcolm. Everybody got a deal. I did it without one. Yo. Yo, this was crazy. The flow, the tone, the delivery, the way he rode the beat. It was like a perfect verse, man, and it still holds up. And here's the crazy part. Everybody did their thing too. Apparently, Kanye West submitted a verse, but then he heard Eminem's verse and he was like, nah, I need to redo my verse. Which makes sense, because Kanye's next on the song, and this is probably my favorite Kanye verse of all time. He goes, now we super bad chicks giving me Mick loving. You would think I run the world like Michelle's husband. You would think they know me when they really doesn't, like they was down with the old me. No, you wasn't. He goes, oh, you're such a loser. He ain't even go to class. Beulah. Trade the Grammy plaques just to have my granny pack. Remember she had the bad hip like a fanny pack. Chasing the stardom will turn you to a maniac. All the way in Hollywood and I can't even act. They put the cameras out and goddamn he snapped. I used to want this thing forever. Y'all can have it back. Yo, listen, yo. Now, here's a hot take. I know a lot of people's favorite verse on this joint is Eminem's, right? And listen, I rock with M. The M documentary is coming, okay? But, yo, for me personally, my favorite verse on this thing was Lil Wayne, okay? Weezy F baby, okay? Like, I love how laid back and smooth he is with it. Just how effortless the punchlines feel. My man goes, hello, it's the Martian, Space Jam Jordans, I want this thing forever, wake up and smell the gardens, fresher than the harvest, step up to the target, if I had one guess, then I guess I'm just New Orleans, and I will never stop like I'm running from the cops. Hop up in my car and told my chauffeur to the top. Life is such a roller coaster, then it drops. But why should I scream for? This is my theme park. My mind shine even when my thoughts seem dark. On my side, you don't wanna hear that thing talk. Let the king talk, check the price and pay attention. Lil Wayne, that's what they gotta say, you'll mention. I'm like Nevada in the middle of the summer. I'm resting in the lead, I need a pillow undercover. Shh, my foot sleeping on the gas. No brake pads, no such thing as last. Yo, Weezy F baby, and the F is for flawless. Yo, and then Eminem ends it on a high. Like, there's a reason why this is a lot of people's favorite verse, right? Homeboy goes, There they go, packing stadiums as Shady spits his flow. Nuts they go, macadamium, they go ballistic, whoa. He can make them look like bozos. He's wondering if he should spit this slow. No, go for broke, his cup just runneth over. Oh no, he ain't had a buzz like this since the last time that he overdosed. They've been waiting patiently for Pinocchio to poke his nose back into the game, and they know rap will never be the same as before. Bashing in the brains all these hoes and establishing the name as he goes. The passion and the flame is ignited. You can't put it out once we light it. This is exactly what we're talking about when we riot. You're dealing with the few true villains who stand inside of a booth, truth spilling, and spit true feelings until our tooth fillings come flying up out of our mouths. Now rewind it. Payback for the way you doubted me. How's it taste when I slap the taste out your mouth? When the bass so loud that it shakes the place. I'm Hannibal Lecter. So just in case you're thinking of saving face, you ain't gonna have no face to save by the time I'm through with this place. Yo! M's just built different, ain't he? But yo, this was Drake doing his thing on a track with legends, and he sounded comfortable. He understood the assignment. In 2010, Drake dropped his debut studio album, Thank Me Later. All 4 singles from the album hit the top 40 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts, with the highest being Find Your Love, which peaked at number 5 and was certified 3 times multi-platinum. The album itself was number 1 on the Billboard 200, and it really foreshadowed the emo influence that was about to define the next generation of hip-hop. The songs on this thing are nostalgic. There's a sensitivity and bittersweet ambience that makes these themes of success, love, and paranoia just hit different. Just like Kanye West and Lil Wayne before him, Drake was opening up hip-hop to a wider audience. This was a time when R&B galleys were adding Drake to their playlist. You had indie pop singers doing covers of Drake songs.
I better find your loving, I better find your heart.
The next year, 2011, Drake dropped his second studio album, Take Care. And yo, this joint was even bigger than Thank Me Later. Drake and his producer 40 doubled down on what was being called the Toronto sound. Spacey beats, minimalist vibes, heavy bass, moody, atmospheric, and the lyrics, they were a perfect mixture of that braggadocious, punchline heavy hip-hop from the party, nightclub scene, and that vibey, melancholic energy. The lyrics leaned more into that honesty and vulnerability. Homeboy was talking about jealousy, loneliness, insecurity, adjusting to fame and that. On the joint Marvin's Room, which was recorded in Marvin Gaye's old studio, Drake takes the idea of calling an ex-girlfriend while drunk and vulnerable, and he creates this vibey, slow, hard-hitting, self-destructive, low-key self-depreciating song, and it just stays with you long after listening to it. The album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, and it was later certified as Diamond, bro. Diamond. The kid sleeping in his dressing room in Canada, barely affording to pay rent for his moms and that, was now certified Diamond. He then went on a world tour to promote the album, and it was bussing. It showcased Drake's ability to predict the next big thing and stay on top of trends, because the opening artists on the tour, they would all go on to become legends in their own rights. We're talking Kendrick Lamar, A$AP Rocky, Meek Mill, Waka Flocka Flame. It was like the future of rap was right there with them on the tour. And it wasn't just them. We had established superstars there like the Weeknd and French Montana. And in New York, there was a reunion of the Diplomats, which had the fans wilding out. All in all, the tour was one of the most biggest, most successful hip-hop tours of 2012, banking over $42 million. Okay, now 2012 is also when we had our first Drake beef. We do, and it's with Chris Brown. Light skin on light skin crime. Alright, so apparently there was tension between the two of them because of Rihanna. Chris Brown famously dated Rihanna, right? And Drake, Drake has Rihanna on a few songs, made it clear publicly that he was feeling her, and the two of them, they kind of had an on and off thing going on. So there was like this tension, okay? This tension between the two of them because of Rihanna, and it all came to a head when they were both in the same club in Soho. And it kicked off Royal Rumble vibes. Bottles were thrown, Chris Brown tweeted, and then later deleted a picture of himself with like a banged up chin, and it straight up went, Drake's entourage initiated the whole thing. The club had to shut down for a bit, and they sued Chris Brown and Drake for $16 million. I don't know if they got any of that money. I don't know. If anybody knows, let us know in the comments. The two of them would go back and forth on wax for a minute, but in 2014, they both appeared on a sketch comedy thing, and in 2019, they collaborated on a joint No Guidance, implying that the beef was squashed. In 2013, Drake was nominated for the Rap Album of the Year Grammy, and the category was stacked. He was up against 2 Chainz based on a true story, which had produced bangers like the double platinum Birthday song featuring Kanye West. He was up against Food and Liquor 2 by Lupe Fiasco. And the crazy thing is, just a few years ago, Drake was in a mixtape sampling Lupe Fiasco. Just a few years ago, Drake was listening to these rappers. He was a fan, and now he was in a room with them, nominated with them. He was up against Nas, bro, Rick Ross, The Roots, and he won it, okay? He did, he won the thing. In 2013, Drake dropped his 3rd studio album, Nothing Was the Same, which debuted at #1 on the US Billboard 200, and it topped the charts in the UK, Canada, Denmark, Australia. It was doing bits. Critics praised this joint for its laser-sharp focus and cohesiveness, mostly due to the fact that it was largely produced by 40. Drake was able to balance a more aggressive delivery style with a catchy melodic vibe. This thing was packed with bangers. Everybody was going, started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now the whole team here. Started from the bottom, now we're here. Yo. Now, whilst all of this is happening, right? Whilst Homeboy is on this legendary run, banging mixtapes, 3 #1 albums, world tours. It's not all love. It's not all sunshine and roses. Hip-hop purists are divided when it comes to Drake. And we've seen this before. When a rapper gets too big, gets too much commercial acclaim or experiments a bit too far from what's regarded as traditional hip-hop, they get backlash. We saw it with LL Cool J. We saw it with rappers like Nelly, Outkast, and the whole mumble rap discourse. Drake was making music that was very radio friendly. He was making music that had massive crossover appeal. He was singing, he was being funny in interviews, and there were some rap purists, old heads who saw him as commercial, pop rap, not real hip hop. But some of his peers did see him as a dope MC. Kendrick Lamar, who Drake had brought on tour with and collaborated with in the past, he dropped a verse on Control, okay? A Big Sean song that also featured Jay Electronica, and on the verse, Kendrick compares himself to legends. And then he calls out his peers, including Drake. He was calling out rappers who were popping at the time. He calls them out by name. He's basically standing in the ring going, hey, who wants some? A lot of the rappers mentioned, they saw it as, friendly competition. They saw it as a way to prove that they were lyrically witted. Rappers like Pusha T saw it as a compliment. But Drake, you could tell he wasn't really feeling the whole thing.
He's the new guy to love. And of course, rightfully so. He's super talented, He is the underdog that's extremely hungry. And he's doing his thing really well. And that verse was, he's giving people like moments, that verse was a moment to talk about. Are you listening to it now at this point in time? Okay. And then, but it was real cool for a couple weeks. But if I ask you, for example, how does that verse start?
Oh, do you remember?
No, and now mind you, It'll go on and Complex and Rap Radar, give it like verse of the millennium. It was you that was like, is Kendrick Lamar your biggest competition like in this generation or whatever? And I think that Kendrick has like the utmost potential, man. Like, you know, I see Kendrick tomorrow, I'm adapt him. I didn't feel a way about that verse. I get it.
Kendrick's whole thing was, yo, it's hip hop, it's competitive, it's a competitive sport. Everybody claims to be the greatest and we go at each other. But for Drake, hip-hop was collaboration. You only went at someone if you actually had a problem with them in real life. This was kind of the beginning of the whole Kendrick and Drake beef. We'll get into it. But for now, it's 2014. P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka Puff Daddy, has just spotted Drake at a club in Miami. He doesn't look too happy, man. He doesn't look too happy. He rocks up to him. He's like, yo, we need to talk about the song. You're never gonna disrespect me again. Drake's like, there ain't nothing to talk about. And he walks out the club. Diddy follows him and bro. Drake's old arm injury flares up, dislocated. He's on the ground. He's rushed to the emergency room. If you're wondering what led up to this altercation, basically a producer sent over a beat to Diddy. Apparently Diddy wasn't really feeling it, but he sent it over to Drake for like a feature situation. Drake did his thing on it. Drake did his thing on it. Diddy heard it. It was like, I don't know, man. This song, I don't think it's the one. Drake was like, all right, whatever. He dropped the record and it was a huge hit. So now Diddy's feeling some type of way. This beef, it didn't really escalate any further. But in the following year, in 2015, Drake was about to get involved in a beef that would start rumors that would haunt him for the rest of his career. All right, now it's 2015. February 13, and Drake just dropped a surprise album on Spotify. It's called If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. And yo, this thing broke Spotify's first week streaming record. It debuted at the top spot on the Billboard 200. The critical reception, it was mostly positive. People were feeling it. But it's 2015, right? And remember I told you that Drake was about to get involved in a beef that will bring up rumors that will follow him throughout his career? Remember I said that? Remember? Yeah, so check this. Meek Mill has a song on his album, and he's like, hey, this would sound amazing with a Drake feature on it. So he reaches out, they make it happen. It's fire. Now, apparently, Drake, he's not promoting the song. He's not shouting it out on his social media. He's not rushing to do up a video for it. He's not talking about it in interviews. And Meek is not having it. He's like, yo, he jumps on Twitter and he goes, the reason Drake is not promoting the single is because he didn't write the verse. It was ghostwritten by a dude called Quentin Miller. And Drake was upset that Meek Mill had found out. Now, this whole thing was like a huge explosion in the culture. Because in hip hop, having a ghostwriter is like the biggest sin. It's like the equivalent of someone lip syncing to a song that's sung by someone else and claiming they're the ones doing the singing. And prior to this whole thing, Drake had said how his approach to creating music was similar to Kanye West and Diddy, where it was all about collaboration, right? Like a bunch of dudes are in the studio, you're vibing, you're writing, someone might shout out a line and you go, oh, that's dope, and you add it in. Now, everyone was really coming at Drake, calling him fake, especially when demo records of Quentin Miller leaked. Now, Quentin Miller was an aspiring rapper. He wrote some songs with the hopes that Drake would feature on them.
I have no embarrassment when it comes to what I did on that album. You know, I mean, I worked with somebody on, I think, 4 or 5 songs on that record. I pulled my weight when it came to my pen. It wasn't like I just, you know, it wasn't like I needed somebody to facilitate, you know, entire ideas. We worked together. And if I need to be the poster child that took all those hits for all my peers hiding behind me that do the same thing, that's fine, I'll do it. You know, because there's a lot of people that link up with other people and make records that you guys love, right. You know? And that's kind of how music is a collaborative thing, you know? And I understand in rap, of course, in your comment section, it's a little different because we conduct ourselves, and I still associate myself in that community, we conduct ourselves by a few different rules.
Drake heard some of the joints and was like, look, I'll change a line or two, but I'll release the record myself, you know, as my song. which again in hip hop is like a whole thing. But for the rest of the music industry, you know, for other genres, that's how it works. I genuinely believe that's why a lot of rappers don't have the same longevity as artists in different genres. Think about it. If you're a 16-year-old pop artist, okay, your song went viral online, now a label signed you and they're like, cool, you know, they'll hook you up with a team of writers. They're going through hundreds of songs written by talented songwriters, trying to find the songs that fit your brand, you know, that will connect with your fans. And they can do that throughout your career. You can be on your 7th, 8th album and still have a bunch of great songs at your disposal. But now, same scenario, right? You're a 16-year-old rapper. Your song goes viral, okay? It's blowing up on TikTok. You get signed to a label, and that label is expecting you to match or top the success of your breakthrough joint. You're in a genre, a culture that's expecting you to write a bunch of hits, to keep growing and evolving as an artist, to find new ways of getting your message across. And yo, you're just a 16-year-old kid. You know, you're just a 16-year-old kid that found a vibe that worked for a minute. Now, I get it, okay? The argument is hip-hop is supposed to be about the MC, the rapper, expressing his thoughts and feelings. That's how it started, right? But to be fair, that's how most music started, okay? Then songwriters came along and went, hey, I don't look like that beautiful woman, you know, that beautiful woman who has the voice of an angel, but I have a gift when it comes to writing songs. So how about I write the records and she sings them? Some of the greatest songs ever sung have like a bunch of people in the writing credits. It be like that. But yeah, it's hip hop. So Drake was under fire and it wasn't looking too good, man. It wasn't looking too good. But then Drake surprises everybody. He drops 2 diss songs aimed at Meek Mill. The first one was called Charged Up and it was fire. But the second one, the second one's the one that made it into the Hall of Fame or diss records. It was called Back to Back. And even hip hop fans who weren't fans of Drake had to admit that he won that hands down. Meek Mill did fire back, but it didn't put a dent on the cultural impact that Back to Back had. He also dropped Hotline Bling at the same time, and the music video for that thing was used in memes. The sound was trending on TikTok. It was viral all over social media. The Meek Mill drama did a lot to boost up Drake's image, because on paper, people thought Meek Mill was the more aggressive, fast-spitting, streets-backed rapper. On paper, people thought Meek Mill would body Drake. So when he won, it changed how some people saw him. He felt untouchable, bigger than life. And while all of this is happening, another artist is exploding at the same exact time: Future. Now, Future had already been bubbling for a minute, but around 2015, Future enters this insane run where he fully leans into his dark, toxic, emotionally numb trap sound, and the streets were loving it. They were eating it up. And weirdly enough, even though Drake and Future seemed completely different on paper, they worked perfectly together. Because Future, right? Cold, toxic, numb, reckless. Drake, emotional, reflective, vulnerable. Future sounded like the aftermath of a breakup. Drake sounded like the breakup itself. And when they linked up, it created this perfect contrast. So in 2015, they dropped the collaborative mixtape, What a Time to Be Alive. And the timing could not have been better. Drake had just survived the biggest controversy of his career. Future was running the streets, and together they sounded unstoppable. The mixtape debuts at #1 on the Billboard 200. Tracks like Jumpman become everywhere, massive. NBA locker rooms, clubs, memes, vines, parties, YouTube compilations. You could not escape that thing. And what made this era so interesting was how Drake adapted himself to Future's world. This wasn't the moody take care version of Drake. This Drake sounded colder, cockier, more aggressive. You can literally hear Drake evolving in real time, absorbing sounds, absorbing slang, absorbing flows. And depending on who you ask, that adaptability was either Drake's greatest strength or the beginning of one of the biggest criticisms against him. Because around this time, people started accusing Drake of being a musical shapeshifter. Like whenever a new wave popped off, Drake somehow found a way to slide into it perfectly. UK sounds, dancehall, trap, Afro beats. Drake was becoming less of a traditional rapper and more like this musical sponge, absorbing global sounds and repackaging them for the mainstream. But whether people loved it or hated it, it was working. 2016. This might genuinely be the peak of Drake's commercial dominance. Like seriously, Homeboy was everywhere. He dropped Summer 16, a huge victory lap record where Drake basically announces that he's running the game. The confidence and aggression on this thing was crazy. My man talks about his bars being bulletproof like Obama's whips, which was a reference to how Obama had said in an interview that he thought Kendrick Lamar would win in a battle against Drake. He's on this record comparing himself to Jimi Hendrix. He's comparing himself to Jay-Z. Dude goes, I wanted to be on Rockefeller till I turned into Jay. Now I got houses in LA. Now I got a bigger pool than Ye. Yo. This wasn't sensitive, self-depreciating, introspective Drake. Nah, this was confidence on 100 Drake. Despite mentioning him on the record though, Drake proved it was all love and mutual respect by featuring both Kanye and Jay-Z on the next single, Pop Style. I mean, he did take him off on the album version, and depending on who you ask, it was because Jay-Z wanted his verse removed out of respect to Meek Mill, or it was because there was drama going on with Spotify and Tidal. But Drake says he just wanted a version that was a little more cohesive. And yo, Jay only had like a couple lines on the record, so it's like people might be disappointed when they go into it, you know, expecting like a Renegade level J verse or whatever. So it's like just take him off, keep it pushing, you know, right? And then Drake drops One Dance, and yo, this changes everything, because One Dance wasn't just a rap hit, it was global. The dancehall influence, the Afrobeat bounce, the minimalist production, this thing took over the planet. #1 in country after country after country. And it became Spotify's most streamed song ever at the time. Think about that. The biggest song on the biggest streaming platform on earth belonged to Drake. The little kid from Toronto had come a long way, man. Views dropped shortly after. One of the most anticipated albums of the decade. Now, critically, the reception was kind of mixed at first. Some critics weren't feeling it because it didn't have that like synergy that his previous joints had. You know, it felt a bit stitched together. Some people loved the atmosphere though, they did. Others felt the album was too long, but commercially, yo, Views spends 13 weeks at #1 on the Billboard 200. Now, a lot of artists, the bigger they get, the more they distance themselves from where they're from. You know, think about Burna Boy and the controversy he had when he was talking about, you know, Nigerian artists. But with Drake, it's like the bigger he got, the more he embraced Canada. Toronto was a part of who he was, part of the brand. Drake started talking about how he was representing the Six, which was slang for Toronto. Apparently it's based on the combination of the city's main area code, 416, and the 6 cities that merged to form Toronto. Drake wasn't the first person to coin the term, but he was the first person to take it worldwide. And it was more than just vibes and aesthetics. Drake is credited for bringing in around $440 million annually through tourism. While researching for this video, this is something that blew my mind, yo. Because people don't talk about it a lot, right? But imagine, like legitly, just take a second and imagine becoming so successful that your hometown seeing an increase in tourism because of you. People are booking flights. They're seeing the sights, staying in hotels, eating in restaurants, boosting up the local economy because of you, okay? Homeboy is responsible for 5% of all of Toronto's $8.8 billion tourism. Okay, he was locking in partnerships with local restaurants. He was doing up festivals. For years, Toronto wasn't even part of the conversation when it came to hip-hop music. Now, Drake had turned the city into a global music hub. The Summer 16 tour with Future became another huge moment, and the energy around this tour was crazy. Two of the biggest artists on earth sharing the same stage every night. The chemistry was insane. The shows were massive. And financially, it became one of the highest earning hip hop tours ever at the time. At this point, Drake isn't just a rapper anymore. He's a phenomenon. But yo, remember those ghostwriting rumors? They were still hanging over his head like a cloud. Pusha T threw a subliminal diss at Drake on the song HGTV Freestyle. Drake responded on his track Two Birds, One Stone, where he questioned the authenticity of all the things Pusha T raps about. On the same joint, Drake also sent some jabs at Kid Cudi, who'd gone on a Twitter rant dissing Kanye West and Drake. Pusha T didn't respond to the song immediately, but the tension between them was there, simmering. But then, in 2017, Drake drops More Life. And this project really shows how much Drake's music had evolved beyond traditional hip-hop. Because More Life wasn't even presented as an album. Drake called it a playlist. And honestly, it makes sense, because the project sounded like Drake pulling inspiration from all over the world. UK grime, dancehall, Afrobeats, trap, R&B. Artists like Skepta and Giggs appear on the project, introducing a lot of mainstream American audiences to UK rap culture. And once again, Drake proves he has an unbelievable ear for where music is heading next. But at the same time, the criticism around him keeps growing louder. Some people saw Drake as a cultural bridge, bringing different cultures, sounds, and vibes together, helping certain sounds reach a wider audience. Others saw him as a culture vulture. And for the first time in his career, it felt like the conversation around Drake was becoming just as important as the music itself. Now, by 2018, Drake is solidified as one of the biggest rappers alive. The consistency, the work rate, it's insane. It's like every few months, Drake was dropping another banger that completely took over the culture. Like, peep this, right? January 20th, 2018. Drake drops a 2-track EP called Scary Hours. The standout joint on this was God's Plan. Now, initially, Drake wasn't even sure if God's Plan would make the album. Think about that for a second, right? One of the biggest songs of the decade was almost treated like a throwaway. But the second the track dropped, it exploded. And part of what made God's Plan hit so different was the timing. Because remember, Drake was still dealing with criticism. The ghostwriting allegations still followed him. People questioned his authenticity. People questioned his dominance. People questioned whether he was too commercial. But God's Plan, it felt bigger than all of that. It felt like he was saying, hey, it's not just about my talent. It's not just about me. It's destiny. It's God's plan. The song had this warm, uplifting, almost spiritual energy to it. And then the music video drops. And Drake, he did something genius with the music video, right? Instead of flexing cars and jewelry, he gives away the entire music video budget. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Families, students, single mothers, schools, strangers in supermarkets. It was divisive. There were people who called it performative. Those are the same people who hate on YouTubers who do big giveaways. And on one hand, I get where they're coming from. It's like, oh, it's exploitation, it's performative. But on the other hand, if you were one of those people on the receiving end of a life-changing amount of money, you would not care that that person is getting some clout out of it. I think it's crazy when someone films themselves or, makes a big deal out of helping strangers or whatever, and people are like, oh, it's not genuine, because if they were doing it out the kindness of their heart, they would do it in secret. And it's like, yo, the people you look up to, they don't do it in secret. They don't do it at all. Like, say worst case scenario, you're right. The person isn't doing it out of the kindness of their heart. It's all just a PR move. The end result is still the same. Yo, if I was walking in the high street tomorrow and some obnoxious, over-the-top, annoying YouTuber run up to me, stuck a camera in my face, and gave me $100,000, I would not care. I would not care if he's just doing it for clicks, if he's not doing it because he likes me. I would not care, because that paper would help me clear up my debt, council tax, gas, electric, all that, I'd have enough bank to not have to worry about rent for like a year. It would give me time to lock in on my grind 100% without worrying about the 9 to 5. That paper would change my life. So, at the end of the day, whether you thought it was genuine or a PR move, it worked, okay? The video became a massive viral moment. God's Plan debuts at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. And then it stays there for 11 weeks, bro. 11. And just when people think he can't possibly get any bigger, Drake drops Nice for What? And yo, this record, different energy completely. Built around a Louisiana bounce-inspired Lauryn Hill sample, Nice for What felt like a celebration, confident, fun. And the timing was smart. It was perfect because this was during a period where conversations around women's empowerment were becoming huge culturally. And this joint was doing it in a way that didn't feel like it was pandering. It felt authentic. The music video took it to the next level because Drake brought in a bunch of successful women from different industries. We're talking Alisa Ray, Tracy Ellis Ross, Tiffany Haddish, Olivia Wilde, Zoe Saldana, Yara Yashidi, Letitia Wright, Emma Roberts, Misty Copeland, and they look good in the video, okay? Powerful, beautiful, and commercially, the song was another banger. God's Plan gets replaced at #1 by Nice for What, okay? Meaning Drake had replaced himself at the top of the charts again. But yo, remember that simmering tension, right? That simmering tension between Pusha T and Drake. Yeah, it was about to bubble up to the surface. Pusha T dropped a joint called Infrared, where he came at Drake and made fun of him for not writing his own lyrics. He questioned Drake's place in hip-hop, and he did it all on a banging Kanye West beat. Drake clapped back with the quickness. He responded within hours. Okay? He dropped the Duppy freestyle. And yo, if you go back and watch the hip-hop reaction community at the time, the videos people were making, it was like, hey, Drake has done to Pusha T what he did to Meek Mill. Because yo, this joint was fire. He came at Kanye West. He attacked Pusha T from different angles. He insinuated that he'd ghostwritten for a bunch of rappers, including Kanye West, who was the owner of the label Pusha T was signed to. He questioned Pusha T's authenticity. He name-dropped Pusha T's wife. The flow, the rhyme schemes, the production. This thing was fire. For many rappers, this would have been a KO. But Pusha T came prepared, bro. Considered by most hip-hop fans to be one of the most savage diss tracks in hip-hop history. Right up there with Nas's Ether and Tupac's Hit 'Em Up. Everything about this joint was perfectly calculated and executed. Right down to the artwork, which featured a real-life image of Drake dressed up as a blackface character from a minstrel show. The instrumental used was from Jay-Z's Life of OJ. Again, super strategic, because that song dealt with legacy, black identity, and Pusha T was attacking Drake in those areas. The most shocking thing about this song is Pusha T revealed that Drake was hiding a child. Yo, the way Pusha T framed it was Drake was keeping the kid a secret because he was ashamed of the mom, who was primarily known for thirst trapping, being a model. She'd appeared in a bunch of music videos. And Pusha T goes on to talk about how Drake's dad left him when he was 5, and now he was following in his footsteps and abandoning his son. Yo. But for Drake, that wasn't even the worst part. The lines that hurt the most, the ones that felt like they crossed the lines a bit, were about his producer and business partner, 40. This was a man who had been by Drake's side since the early mixtape days. They built up the sound together, built up OVO as a label together. They had a close friendship that had survived all the craziness that comes with the music industry. They were more than friends, they were like family. And on this song, Pusha T mocks him for his battle with multiple sclerosis. Like, what? The song was massive. Drake didn't respond, but he didn't go off and lick his wounds either. Instead, he dropped his 5th studio album, Scorpion. Now, for the first time in Drake's career, he looked genuinely shaken. That untouchable image cracked. And Scorpion feels like Drake trying to respond to the chaos around him in real time. The album is huge, like literally huge, like double album huge. Side A is more rap heavy. Side B leans into R&B and melody. And despite the controversy surrounding Drake at the time, the numbers were insane. Streaming records shattered. #1 everywhere. Massive first week sales. But the biggest moment from the album? In My Feelings. Now, this right here was peak internet era Drake because the song itself was already catchy. Kiki, do you love me? Everybody knew the words instantly. But then social media takes over. The In My Feelings challenge goes viral. Celebrities, athletes, random people dancing next to moving cars. The song becomes unavoidable. At this point, it almost felt like Drake had figured out the formula for dominating the streaming era. Catchy hooks, memeable moments, emotional honesty, global sound, strategic collaborations. And no matter how much criticism came his way, the audience kept showing up. And Drake's influence, it starts extending beyond music. Because people forget, Homeboy wasn't just making hits, he was building an empire. He became an executive producer on Euphoria, and the show went on to become one of the biggest TV shows on the planet. Dark, stylish, emotionally chaotic, and honestly, the atmosphere kind of fits Drake's whole brand perfectly. And then there's Top Boy, and this one's really important because Drake had genuinely been a fan of the original UK series for years. The show had already developed a cult following, but after getting cancelled, Drake helps revive it through Netflix. And that move, it matters. It matters culturally because Drake had been championing UK culture for a minute now. UK rap, UK slang, UK artists, and helping bring Top Boy back, that was another example of Drake using his platform to amplify scenes he genuinely connected with. Of course, not everybody saw it that way, okay? Some people appreciated Drake for shining a spotlight on different cultures and sounds. Others accused him of attaching himself to whatever wave felt hot at the moment. And by now, that debate had become part of the Drake experience itself. But regardless of where people stood, one thing was undeniable. 2018 Drake was moving on a level very few artists in history had ever reached. The following year, 2019, Drake drops War. And this record was interesting for a bunch of reasons. First of all, the UK drill influence was heavy on it, and he sounded authentic with it. The beat, the flow, the slang. At this point, Drake's connection to UK culture had become a huge part of his identity. He's hanging around with UK rappers, working with UK artists, the whole Top Boy thing. He's bigging up the UK, which makes sense because Canada has this random connection with the UK. Like some of the Canadian slang and culture is more in common with the UK than the US. And I say this as someone who lives in London but also spends a lot of time in Canada. And lyrically, Drake sounded colder again, more paranoid, more calculated, like someone constantly aware that people were waiting for him to slip up. Then 2020 happens. The world shuts down. Everybody's stuck inside. And somehow, Drake still finds a way to dominate the conversation. Toosie Slide drops. Now, critically, this song was divisive because unlike In My Feelings where the dance challenge happened naturally, it happened organically, people felt like this joint was engineered specifically for TikTok. In fact, you could argue that this song really influenced the TikTokification of hip-hop. Like, you had artists making songs in a specific way, like, hey, this bit will go viral in TikTok, this sound will get used, a little dance trend will get cooked up to this part. And it worked for Drake. It's like he'd fully cracked the social media formula. Simple dance, simple hook, instantly repeatable, right? Right foot up, left foot slide. And even though people clowned it, the strategy worked. The hashtag brought in like 5.7 billion views. Billion, bro. It became the first joint on TikTok to hit 1 billion views, and they did that in like 3 days. The song debuts at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and Drake becomes the first male artist ever to debut 3 songs at #1. That's the thing with Drake. Even when people claimed they hated what he was doing, the numbers kept saying otherwise. Around this same period, Drake drops Dark Lane demo tapes. And honestly, this project feels kind of fascinating in retrospect because it's messy, man. It's experimental. It's all over the place. But it was perfect for the moment because it made sense. The world itself felt uncertain. And Dark Lane demo tape sounds like Drake throwing listeners into the middle of his chaotic creative process. Like you're there in the session. You know, leaks, throwaways, different sounds, different moods. But one thing becomes very clear on this project. Drake's influence on modern rap had become undeniable because by 2020, an entire generation of rappers sounded like some version of Drake. The emotional melodies, the moody production, the sing rapping, the toxic vulnerability, you could hear Drake's fingerprints everywhere in modern music. Then later that year, Drake drops Laugh Now, Cry Later, featuring Lil Durk. And this song feels important because it marks another shift in Drake's career. For years, Drake had been viewed as the up-and-comer, the young guy changing the game. Now, he was becoming the veteran superstar, co-signing the newer generation. And Lil Durk was exploding around this time. The chemistry between them worked perfectly. The music video goes viral too, man. It helped keep him culturally relevant even as new artists emerged. Now, despite all the debates around Drake's artistry, the awards kept piling up. In 2021, he wins Best Rap Song at the Grammys for Laugh Now, Cry Later. But by this point, Drake's relationship with the Grammys had become complicated because earlier in his career, Grammy wins felt validating, proof that hip-hop's emotional outsider had been accepted by the mainstream, by the establishment. But now, Drake seemed bigger than the awards themselves, like he'd outgrown them. He'd openly criticized the Grammys multiple times, questioning their relevance, questioning their decision-making. And honestly, a lot of fans agreed with him. Because by the early 2020s, the music industry had changed. The way people consumed music had changed. The internet culture had shifted. Traditional critics have been replaced by dudes on YouTube, right? Magazine promos and tastemakers have been replaced by people reacting to the songs on camera. Podcasters and TikTokers had more relevancy than award shows. Drake understood this shift. He was right there in the midst of it, locked in. Then he dropped Scary Hours 2. And this project reminded people that Drake could still rap. Because sometimes the internet likes to play games. They like to act like Drake only makes catchy hooks and emotional records. But songs like What's Next, Lemon Pepper Freestyle, Wants and Needs, Drake was talking crazy on his joints, especially Lemon Pepper Freestyle with Rick Ross. That thing feels luxurious, reflective, victorious, like Drake sitting on top of the mountain looking back at everything he survived. And around the same time, Drake receives the Artist of the Decade award at the Billboard Music Awards, which honestly felt deserved. Think about the 2010s for a second. How many artists dominated the entire decade the way Drake had? The hits, the streams, the memes, the features, the albums, the influence, the consistency. Whether you loved Drake or hated him, you could not escape him. And then finally, Certified Lover Boy arrives. Now, this album had insane hype behind it, partly because Drake had delayed it multiple times, but mostly because by now, every Drake album felt like a cultural event. The rollout alone was insane. Billboards appearing in different cities, teasing features, fans trying to decode clues online, the Kanye West tension escalating in the background. And when Certified Lover Boy drops, the internet explodes. Commercially, massive, huge streaming numbers, huge first week, chart domination. But critically, the response was a little bit more divided. Some fans loved hearing Drake double down on the sounds that made him famous. Others felt like he was becoming a little bit repetitive. And this becomes another really important moment in Drake's career, because for the first time, you start hearing people ask, yo, has Drake peaked? Not, is Drake successful? That question was already answered. The new question was, could Drake still evolve? Could the artist who spent years shaping the culture still surprise the culture? And in the middle of all of this, a storm was brewing. Drake didn't know it yet, but he was about to get caught up in one of the biggest hip-hop battles ever, and the results would change everything. Before all of that, Drake was still on his legendary run. In 2022, he featured on Future's song Wait For You alongside Tems, and the record becomes another massive #1 hit. Now, this was a huge moment historically because Drake became just the 10th artist ever to have 10 #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100. Think about that. Think about the company he was now in. We're talking about legends, bro. Michael Jackson, Madonna, the Beatles, Rihanna, Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, Janet Jackson, Stevie Wonder, Elvis Presley, and now Drake. Notice how Drake was the only rapper on that list. Notice how the kid from Degrassi, the unsigned Canadian rapper people once laughed at, the emotional rapper hip-hop purists said would never last, he was now sitting statistically behind some of the biggest artists in the history of music. And the crazy thing is, he still wasn't done evolving, because in 2022, Drake does something that catches everybody off guard. He drops Honestly Nevermind. And yo, the reaction to this thing was wild, because this wasn't really a rap album, bro. This was Drake diving headfirst into dance music, house music, Jersey club music. Minimal drums, atmospheric production, more singing than rap, lo-fi energy. The kind of music you have in your headphones when it's 2 a.m. in the morning and you're walking from the function through the high street on your way to get a taxi. You're a little tired, but you're happy and you're vibing. And yo, a lot of people hated this thing at first. Hip-hop fans were confused. People were clowning the album online, memes everywhere. But over time, just like a fine wine, people started appreciating the joint. The replayability was amazing, because Honestly Nevermind kind of showed something important about Drake. Even after becoming one of the safest, biggest commercial artists on the planet, he was still willing to take risks. That's what separates good artists from great ones. Good artists find a formula that works and they stick to it. Great artists, they take risks, bro. Later that same year, he links up with 21 Savage and drops Her Loss. And yo, this project immediately felt different. Cold, arrogant, funny, petty, competitive. This was Drake fully leaning back into his rapper bag. The chemistry between him and 21 Savage was dope. And culturally, Her Loss felt like Drake reminding everybody, don't get it twisted, I can still spit. Songs from the project dominated social media. The memes, the captions, the toxic bars, the internet was eating it up. And by now, Drake had mastered something that a lot of artists struggle with: longevity. And then in 2023, he drops For All the Dogs. Now, this project felt like Drake revisiting a lot of the themes that made people fall in love with his music in the first place: relationships, ego, loneliness, success, paranoia, competition, and the biggest moment from the album: First Person Shooter with J. Cole. Listen, this record immediately became a huge talking point, because Drake and J. Cole are basically standing on the track going, yeah, we're the ones, we're the big dogs. J. Cole even references the big three conversation: Drake, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole. For years, hip-hop fans had debated who really sat at the top of modern rap. And this song kind of felt like Drake and Cole acknowledging that conversation directly. But then, everything changes. March 2024. Future and Metro Boomin dropped the song Like That. And Kendrick Lamar jumps on the record and basically declares war. No subliminals, no sneak disses, straight smoke. He dismisses the whole big three conversation entirely, basically saying it's just big me, okay? And yo, the culture goes crazy. Videos are being made of people reacting to those lines, and it's like, yo, Drake and J. Cole gotta respond, they gotta. And man, the whole thing was a long time coming, because remember, this tension between Drake and Kendrick had been bubbling underneath the surface for years. Control, the sneak disses, the subliminals, the interviews, the subtle shots, and now everything was finally exploding into the open. Hip-hop fans were excited. J. Cole responds first with 7-minute drill, and initially, people are shocked. People are shooketh because J. Cole usually avoids drama, but this was Kendrick pressing J. Cole, backing him into a corner, asking him to back up all that talk of being one of the greats. He had to respond. The song itself, it was a decent round one response, it was. The beat was dope, especially when it switches up, and J. Cole had some fire flows, some dope rhymes, and he found a few good angles to come at Kendrick with. The biggest one being, a diss about Kendrick's output, the gaps between each release, the inconsistency in quality. The reception, it was mixed. Some loved it, and some people thought it was rubbish compared to Kendrick's verse. But those of us who'd experienced rap beefs like Cannabis versus LL Cool J, or Jay-Z versus Nas, and 50 Cent versus Ja Rule, we knew this was just round one. This was just J. Cole stepping into the ring, you know what I'm saying? As the battle progressed, we expected to see J. Cole bobbing, weaving, throwing some jabs, hooks, maybe even a haymaker. But then, something even more shocking happens. J. Cole takes off his gloves and steps out the ring, bro. He just gives up. I kid you not, man. Just a few days later, J. Cole gets up on stage at a concert and apologizes. He goes, the whole thing didn't sit right with his spirit, and he removes the track from all streaming platforms. And instantly, the internet turns on him. Memes, think pieces, debates. Some people did respect J. Cole, right? They respected the maturity. They respected the fact that J. Cole wasn't letting himself get peer pressured into getting involved in something when his heart wasn't truly in it. And a part of me agrees with that. I get it. But the problem is, J. Cole wanted to be mentioned in the greatest of all time conversations. He wanted his body of work to be held up as classics. And in hip hop, when you carry yourself like that, you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared for someone to come along and go, hey, I'm better than you. And you have to defend your position. Most people felt like J. Cole had bowed out of the biggest rap battle in years before it even started, which left Drake standing alone. And yo, remember, Drake was a student of the game. He knows what good rap is. He knows how good Kendrick is. Matter of fact, he was one of the first to notice the talent and actually brought him along on his tour. So Drake must have known what he was going up against, but he didn't back down, and you gotta respect that. He responds with push-ups. And this record immediately reminds people why Drake had survived so many battles. Because Drake understands how to make disrespect sound entertaining. The jokes, the pettiness, the memes, the punchlines. He comes at Kendrick, Future, Metro, Rick Ross, everybody. He makes fun of Kendrick's height and stature. There's a line on this joint, right? There's a line, the first time I heard it, I burst out laughing at just how petty and silly it was. This man goes, how you big stepping with a size 7 men's on? He goes on to say, Pip Squeak, pipe down. You ain't in no big 3. SZA got you wiped down. Travis got you wiped down. Savage got you wiped down. Like your label boy, you in the scope right now. And you gonna feel the aftermath of what I write down. I'm up the top of the mountain, so you tight now. Just to have this talk with you, I had to hike down. Big difference between Mike then and Mike now. What is this, a 20v1? What's a prince to a king? He a son. Got more love in the city that you're from. Metro, shut your whole ass up or make some drums. Yo, the disrespect. Then he follows it up with tailor-made freestyle. Hey, yo, this record, it was a bit of a misstep, okay? It caused a lot of controversy because Drake used AI-generated voices recreating Tupac and Snoop Dogg. Some people thought it was genius trolling, but, a lot of people thought it crossed the line, especially considering Tupac's legacy and the whole West Coast thing. Eventually, the record gets taken down after legal pressure from Tupac's estate. Kendrick hasn't even responded yet, and the battle has fully consumed hip-hop culture. Every YouTube channel remotely connected to hip-hop was covering this. Lyrics were being dissected. Everybody was picking sides. Podcasts, reaction channels, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit. You could not escape this beef. Then Kendrick responds with Euphoria. And yo, this wasn't some quick club diss. This was surgical, long, detailed, personal, calculated. This man goes, this ain't been about critics, not about gimmicks, not about the greatest. It's always been about love and hate. Now let me say I'm the biggest hater. I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. I hate the way that you sneak diss. If I catch flight, it's gonna be direct. We hate the girls you sleep with because they confuse themselves with real women. And notice I said we, it's not just me. I'm what the culture's feeling. How many more fairy tale stories about your life till we've had enough? How many more black features till you feel that you're black enough? I like Drake with the melodies. I don't like Drake when he act tough. Yo! Kendrick spends the entire track dissecting Drake's identity, persona, and place within hip-hop culture. And suddenly, the battle starts feeling less like entertainment and more like strategic character assassination. Meanwhile, other artists start jumping into their KOs too. Rick Ross disses Drake. A$AP Rocky sends shots. Kanye West gets involved because, of course, Kanye gets involved. At this point, it feels like years of tension around Drake are all exploding at the exact same time. It's like Drake's backed in a corner and everybody's just coming for him. He goes, I bet, and drops Family Matters. And this joint is considered by many Drake fans as the best song out of the whole beef. And yo, I get it. I can see why someone would think that. The production on this thing is disgusting. The beat switches, the flow, the delivery, and Drake comes at Kendrick from every angle. Relationships, family, alleged abuse, hypocrisy. It was probably the most direct and aggressive Drake had ever sounded on a diss record. It's the kind of song that would body most rappers and end their careers. But then Kendrick does something that completely changes the momentum, because less than an hour later, he drops Meet the Grams. And yo, the energy around the battle shifts instantly. This wasn't a diss track you played in the club. This felt dark, uncomfortable, disturbing. Kendrick addresses Drake's son. He addresses Drake's parents. He addresses Drake directly, like he's psychologically tearing apart Drake's entire family in real life. And the timing of the release, genius, because now people weren't talking about Family Matters, they were talking about Kendrick. And yo, he wasn't done, because then he drops Not Like Us. And this right here, this becomes the cultural KO, because Kendrick somehow manages to take one of the biggest rap beefs in history and turns it into a West Coast anthem. The song was everywhere. Clubs, parties, NBA games, TikTok, memes, festivals. People who didn't even follow hip-hop knew the lyrics. And what made the moment so brutal for Drake was this: Not Like Us wasn't just winning lyrically, it was winning culturally. And when a diss record becomes a cultural celebration, that's hard to recover from. Now, eventually, Drake files legal complaints connected to the release and promotion of the records. And instantly, the internet debates explode again. A few of Drake's die-hard fans had his back. They were like, yo, he had to do it. He had to protect his brand and his reputation. But most people felt like going the legal route in hip hop looked weak. It was soft. It was not the move. Personally, I can see both sides, okay? Because when Not Like Us dropped, I was working in London at a popular secondhand retail chain. And every year during summer, they threw together this 3-day festival with tents, food, bands, karaoke, DJs, all that. And I remember, right, one of the DJs put on Not Like Us, and everybody was like going crazy. They were rapping along to the lyrics. You know, these were people who were mostly into like alternative music and stuff. But here they were, like all rapping along, going, trying to strike a chord, and it's probably A minor. And yo, I kicked it with a bunch of people afterwards. And I think a lot of hip hop people don't realize that a lot of people are not hip hop people. Okay, you know what I'm saying? What I mean by that is when Drake sued for defamation, the hip hop community almost unanimously was like, that's crazy. It's a rap battle. Crazy things get said in a rap battle. You can't sue. You know what I'm saying? It's part of the game. But Drake had a lot of fans who were not hip-hop people. Drake was a global superstar. He had some fans and casual listeners who were not familiar with how rap battles work. And when they heard Drake being called a PDF file, some of them were like, wait, is he? And again, to hip-hop fans, that sounds crazy because we know that reckless, crazy things get said in battles. But I kid you not, I've spoken to people who are like, yo, I can't listen to his music. I can't support his music because he is a PDF file. It's like real talk. But on the other hand, the lawsuit represented more than just, the defamation. It was about artists being free to express themselves. I get it. After the battle, it felt like hip-hop was a lot more divided. The battle itself was a huge moment in hip-hop. It was a huge win for hip-hop, but it genuinely felt like you had to pick a side. You were either Team Kendrick or Team Drake, and both sides were doing the most. You had Kendrick fans, dubbed K-bots all over social media, trying to pick fights with Drake fans. You had him saying Drake was one of the worst rappers ever, which was just not true, right? And then you had Drake stans being toxic and weird and trying to discredit Kendrick's pen game and success. Overnight, YouTube channels popped up with people either making content all about hating Drake. Personally, man, there's some Drake songs that I think are amazing. And there's some Kendrick songs that I think are amazing. When I was a teenager, I had friends who were super into conscious hip-hop. Like they only listened to Talib Kweli, Immortal Technique, Common and them. And they looked down on rappers like Nelly and 50 Cent for being too commercial. And I had other friends who only listened to hip-hop at like parties. And I was that kid in the middle. I was that kid who enjoyed the diversity that hip-hop had to offer. I still know a bunch of Ludacris verses off by heart because I was obsessed with his flow and delivery. If you went back in time and got a hold of my MP3 player, you'd find yourself listening to a Luda joint. And then next up, you'd have DMX barking at you. Then you'd have Nelly going, it's getting hot in here, so take off all your clothes. I am getting... Next up, you'd have Eminem going, that's why I seize the moment, try to freeze it and hold it, squeeze it and hold it, because we consider these minutes golden. Listen, next up, you'd have Jay-Z, then you'd have Nas, then you got Young Jeezy, then you got Busta Rhymes, you got Missy Elliott, and that's just me scratching the surface. I've managed to keep that same energy into adulthood. I think the variety and diversity in flows, beats, styles, subject matter, I think it's beautiful. I think you need artists like Kendrick, but I also think you need artists like Drake. Now, after the Kendrick battle, a lot of people thought Drake was finished, like game over. It seemed like the only people in Drake's corner were like super fans. For the first time in his entire career, it felt like the culture had collectively turned against him. People were acting like Drake's run was finally over. But if there's one thing Drake has always understood better than almost anybody else in music, it's timing. Because instead of disappearing completely, Drake starts moving, differently, more calculated, more reflective. And Drake shocks everybody. Not by dropping one album, he drops 3. Iceman, Habibti, and Maid of Honor. And this move was crazy because when the albums debut on the Billboard charts, Drake becomes the first artist ever to hold the top 3 spots on the Billboard 200 at the same time. That's crazy. especially considering this happened after what many people considered the biggest public loss of his career. Iceman felt like Drake in full rap mode, like rapping, aggressive, petty, reflective, vindictive. He sounds a little bitter. He sounds like he's got scars on him, you know what I'm saying? He sounds like he's got the world on his shoulders, a little bitter, a little hurt, a little angry. It sounds raw and honest. It feels like the battle with Kendrick Lamar had just gone down and this was a direct response to it. The production was cold, cinematic, minimalistic, letting the vocals take center stage. And lyrically, he's addressing all the noise, the betrayal. He's addressing the critics. He's addressing people he felt switched up on him. And yo, the beats, the flows, the punchlines, the delivery. Woo-hoo-hoo. And then that Janice joint dropped and debuted at #1, making this his 14th #1, breaking Michael Jackson's record. So, commercially, banging, all right? Drake fans were not disappointed. Like, hey, it was worth the wait. It was worth the wait. A lot of critics felt the album was too focused on old beefs and grudges. But I guess Drake had anticipated that because we got 2 more joints, right? We got Habibti. And this project leaned way heavier into that slow burning R&B aesthetic. It's shorter, woozier, a lot more intimate. It explored Drake's romantic side again. We're talking late night conversations, relationships, desire, self-pity, toxicity. Classic OG Drake, right? All the things Drake fans love him for. There's like a nostalgic energy to this album, man. A cinematic feeling reminding you of a simpler time that may or may not have existed. But the most interesting album of the trilogy? Made of Honor, bro. Because this joint really doubles down on Drake's obsession with global sounds and multicultural influences. House music, dancehall, Afro beats, Jersey club, UK influences, electro. It sounds like a smooth, fluid DJ set in an underground club in London in like the early 2000s. There's joints on this album that you'd hear at a club in Magaluf, at a house party in Ibiza. This isn't squarely aimed at hip-hop fans. This is for the house music fans, sweating on the dance floor at 3 a.m. This is the music you listen to in Amsterdam at your boy's bachelor party. And critically, a lot of reviewers actually considered this the strongest project out of the 3. What's fascinating to me is that some critics argue that this album almost recontextualized Kendrick's criticism about Drake being inauthentic. Because Drake's whole thing has never been about staying inside one box. You can't tell somebody that they're doing too much and they're switching styles when that was always their identity. Drake's identity as an artist was always fluid, always global, always adaptable. And yo, whether people see that as cultural appreciation or cultural appropriation, it's still one of the defining reasons Drake remained relevant for so long. And again, even though the 3 joints are breaking records and doing bits, the effects of that Kendrick Lamar beef can still be felt. There are people online going, hey, all 3 albums are trash, like being super critical. For a lot of people, that Kendrick and Drake beef was their first real hip-hop moment. It was their version of 50 Cent and Ja Rule, their version of Nas and Jay-Z, their version of West Coast versus East Coast. For a lot of people, that was the first time hip-hop felt alive, real. For a lot of people, Kendrick winning that battle was like real hip-hop defeating the commercial fake hip-hop. And it feels like if you posted memes about Kendrick winning the battle, if you engaged in lengthy debates with Drake fans online, if you made videos breaking down the bars on Euphoria, if you've appealed to a certain audience for that long, there is nothing that Drake can put out that can make you go, hey, that's fire. All objectivity just goes out the window. But yo, as far as comebacks go, Drake did his thing. And after everything, the battles, the records, the lawsuits, the backlash, the memes, the criticism, the dominance, Drake is still here, still charting, still breaking records, still selling out arenas, still dominating conversations. And maybe that's the most impressive thing about this entire story. Not that he never lost, not that everybody loved him, but that for over 15 years, no matter how many times people declared the Drake era over, the conversation somehow always came back to Drake. New artists would come in, get their buzz pop and do their thing, but Drake would be right there in that era, bigger than them. And whether history ultimately remembers him as a genius, a culture vulture, a hitmaker, a manipulator, a visionary, or simply one of the greatest entertainers of his generation, one thing is undeniable. The story of 2010s and 2020s hip-hop cannot be told without Drake being at the center of it. Because for better or worse, Drake didn't just soundtrack an era, he became part of people's memories. Hey, that's right. Give Drake his flowers, man. Give that dude his flowers. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you. It means the world to me. If you've made it this far, please give the video a like. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. You know what I'm saying? Rep where you're at. You know what I'm saying? Bruh, or whatnot. Please subscribe if you haven't so we can keep growing this thing. You know what I'm saying? I'll be back with the next joint. Till then, you take care of yourself, fam, because I love you.